I think we can.
Hey everyone, welcome to the dungeon. I'm your host Rob, and today we're going to be talking about War Clerics and Clerics in general while playing some Gloomhaven. So hopefully the angle there isn't too bad. We were too lazy to drag the table out. And
mostly me.
Yeah, so we're just going to talk about Clerics. Jaden here played a Cleric in one of my campaigns to level 18. That one was a War Cleric. And then Brendan played a Grave Domain Cleric in Jaden's Tomb of Annihilation campaign that he ran, and that went to 12-ish, I think. 11 or 12.
We went to 10. We hit 11 at the end of it after
Yeah.
it concluded.
We went to like 11. And then we stopped. Yeah,
Right.
we're playing something completely unrelated and talking about something completely unrelated. So.
Exactly.
Right, should we kick off the cleric talk, or do you want to...
Let's kick off the cleric talk. That way, if we find ourselves running out of steam for conversation, we can play the game a little bit, come back to it. You can always cut it and edit it together, so cut me out right now.
So let's start out with the different cleric abilities. Level 1, you've got bonus proficiencies, so you get heavy armor and martial weapons, which, in my opinion, is actually one of the best.
Which means you can have a cleric with a great axe.
Yes, and it also means you can multi-class into War Cleric and get heavy armor proficiency.
That's true.
Which is honestly one of the best things about it, to be perfectly fair.
If you're gonna play a War Cleric, that's probably the way to go.
The only downside is that if you don't have shield proficiency, which is separate from medium armor proficiency, going into heavy armor or going into War Cleric, you don't pick it up automatically just because you have heavy armor. You might still have to pick that up with a feat if you do that, or pick it up with a different choice, who knows, or just not use shields.
I think clerics get shields normally, don't they?
Ooh, I think you might be right, actually.
Yeah. And then
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. So you get unless it's a multi-classing deficiency, because you only start with certain proficiencies.
You might be right.
We could check it up later, and then you can put it on an annotation on the video.
Alright, so then also, what else you got at level 1 here? You've got War Priest. That's your ability to make a bonus action attack. Number of times equal to your wisdom mod.
Which probably makes the War Cleric one of the best martial fighters up until level 5.
Oh,
yeah.
Especially if you start with like a high wisdom proficiency.
Yeah.
Or whatever your damage modifier is too, because a lot of the time at that level you're competing with people that are using 2-weapon fighting, right?
What does it reset on? A short rest or a long rest?
I think it's a long rest.
It's a long rest, yeah.
But at those levels, your dungeon crawls are usually pretty short as it is.
Yeah. And, you know, everybody else is making one attack around. You have one with the option of 2 a few times a day.
So my average 3 times, because most clerics are going to have about 16 wisdom to start with. So
18 maybe by level.
Yeah. I think it's really good at low levels, especially since you have to use it when you're taking the attack action, and at low level you don't have a lot of other things you're going to do anyways. Like we were talking before we started filming, but I think it would be an amazing ability if it was just a bonus action attack and didn't require you to take the attack action. Because then you could throw down like a Spirit Guardians or a Bless spell and then still use that as your bonus action, but unfortunately you can't. So
I think it does lend itself extremely well to the multi-classing that we brought up, because in essence it's like having 2-weapon fighting, except you still add your ability modifier to the damage, and you're not restricted in using lighter weapons, so you can still use a great axe, a maul, a great sword, whatever you like, you know, the biggest heavy hitting weapons you want. And for example, let's say you're a fighter or a paladin that's taking it. Well, now you've got something else to also proc your smites off of. It's one of those things where it's probably not going to benefit the War Cleric so much in later levels, but if somebody else decides to branch into War Cleric, it's a massive.
if you had a decent wisdom, it wouldn't even be bad. With when I was talking about the Pact of the Blade Warlocks, a Hexblade that took a level of Cleric just for heavy armor and some first level spell slots. You know, now you've got a bonus action attack. Keeps off your wisdom, but if you're using a Hexblade, it'll still use your charisma for the actual attack. So, you know, not the worst. Level 2, you've got Guided Strike. You can give yourself a +10 to your attack roll.
which is fantastic if you pair it with a great weapon and great weapon mastery.
It is.
It doesn't require an action, doesn't require a bonus action, doesn't require a
It's
reaction.
it's just your channel divinity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which you can get up to 3 of at one point, and you get those back on a
and you
short
get
rest.
those- Yeah, exactly. So it pairs very nicely with the War Cleric's ability to acquire great weapon mastery and use a great axe.
It's almost akin to the rogue's level 20, where you get the ability, ignoring the skill check, to turn a miss into a hit.
And like you can,
Yeah.
it's not just yourself that you can give it to, right? Like you can
At
give
level,
it to
level
anybody.
6, you can give it to someone else.
So,
And then at 8 and 14, you get the bonus damage added to your weapon attacks.
which is something that a paladin gets a lot earlier.
Paladin gets it at level 11. You
Then
start
you
getting
get
it.
it smites.
Well, that's true. That is using spell slots.
It is.
That's really the theme of the War Cleric, though, is if you want to be a paladin without the smites, but better
Yeah, I
spells.
really feel that's kind of the,
like there's the trade-off there. Like you're kind of playing the same class, but the War Cleric you have the cleric spell list. But the
yeah,
paladin you have your smites.
and
so-
you're just a better fighter in general.
Exactly.
There's nothing saying you couldn't dip 5 levels into Paladin and pick up extra attacks, mites. You still share
Like,
a lot of the same spells.
What I liked about playing the War Cleric though was like heal is a bonus action.
Yeah.
So that's a 70 hit point heal that you can use as a bonus action, and like I did when we were playing, you can tank a Helm Horror.
Wait, you get a bonus action heal?
It was a Death Knight actually.
Or was it a death
Yeah.
knight? Yeah. Because the spell heal is a bonus action, I thought. Is it not?
No, I think you're recalling that incorrectly.
I might
I
be.
think you had an action heal, and then I think you healed yourself again, and then attacked twice in that scenario in the
think
next
so.
turn.
I might be recalling that incorrectly because I
think
thought
so.
heal was a bonus action.
I just remember you tanking a Death Knight.
Oh
That
yeah,
was pretty
I
impressive.
tanked that pretty hard.
Actually,
He was the one who challenged me. Like he compelled dueled me, and so I decided to throw down.
Well, that was kind of a weird campaign because we started out, we had George as the dungeon master, and you were playing a rogue, and I was playing a champion fighter,
Yeah.
I wasn't there.
and you weren't there. And then George left, and you took over for a while. We did Storm King's Thunder,
Yeah.
and then after that, I started DMing, and we did Curse of Strahd, which is when you started playing the War Cleric.
Yeah.
And then after Curse of Strahd, then we did a bunch of homebrew stuff, and then we did, we ended up with the King in Yellow, which is when you ended up fighting the Death Knights. But yeah, you ended up essentially tanking them. But that was kind of what was weird, is because Mike was playing a Barbarian for Curse of Strahd,
Yeah.
but then he switched to a Wizard,
Yeah.
and I wasn't playing the fighter anymore, because now I was DMing,
Yeah.
and
So
Cody was playing an Elvish Knight in Curse of Strahd, and then switched back to his Warlock that he started the campaign
So,
with.
essentially-
so you ended up being the front line.
the War Cleric became the front line
Yeah.
of that campaign purely because we had no other choice.
And because everybody kept switching characters the whole time. Yeah.
Which like makes a point for the War Cleric, where if you have no other option and everyone else wants to play something else, then
Yeah,
it's
actually,
there.
there's generally 2 different kind of categories of clerics. There's the melee clerics and then the spellcaster
Yeah.
specialization clerics.
And
You can generally tell the difference between one gets their divine strikes, the other gets their improved cantrip
but
damage.
arguably, if you're gonna play a melee-based cleric, you're gonna probably want to go Tempest.
Depends on what you want to do, really, I think. Because you can take a look at Tempest, and it's got a lot more damage. It has, I think, some reactions it has as well. But what the War Cleric has is it has a few support actions for being able to hit things, right? We were
Yeah.
talking before we started recording. I think you can use those, that plus 10 to hit on spells, so you can help your allies land spells, or your own spells.
Yeah.
land.
We said, like, throw it a guiding bolt.
And it does have...
Give yourself plus 10 to hit, and now the next guy on your team has advantage to hit the guy. So,
Yeah.
you know.
And it does have a spellcasting domain counterpart, the light domain. But instead of improving your ally's chance to hit, the light domain decreases the enemy's chance to hit by giving disadvantage.
That's a
And
good
it
point.
almost gets the same abilities, or similar abilities, at the same similar levels as well.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually.
That's what I like about the cleric too. Like the versatility that the one class in the game offers. Like we've had this discussion many times where if you were to play a campaign with only one class, which class would that be? And hands down,
Bard.
It is.
It's
either cleric or bard because both of them fill so many unique roles with their multitude of subclasses. That,
Yeah.
Like if you want like an entire cleric party, let's say you go war, light, life, and
Trickery.
and you have a solid party there. You have your tank, you have your mage, you have your rogue, and you have your healer. Like those are the
I don't think I'd even bother with a life cleric because
Yeah.
we have 3 other guys that can heal. You're
Exactly.
not gonna need life.
life cleric is a little bit overpowered in this situation in that.
It's just a little redundant. I think.
Yeah, because
But like knowledge or arcana would be kind of cool.
it's true too.
Yeah,
And then
arcane
you've got a
definitely.
mage type, you know. Yeah,
Well,
There's
like,
a few.
it is such a versatile class.
Yeah, Grave Domain even, or
Yeah.
Forge Domain. Forge Domain is also a competitor with War Cleric. It's less support and more focus on survivability.
yeah, you
But-
have a lot of survivability as a forge cleric. That's pretty much their thing because they have damage resistance at level. What is it?
They get it at lower level, but they don't get the wider array of damage resistance.
Yeah, and
I
then
don't
their capstone is the damage resistance to everything.
for War
Yeah,
Clerics.
for war clerics.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the one ability we
I
haven't
think
mentioned
Forge
yet,
Domain
Avatar of
clerics-
Battle.
I think Forge Domain clerics actually get immunity
to
to
fire, yeah.
at higher levels. Yeah, they get resistance at lower level, which isn't bad because fire damage is very common. Just
Yeah.
not as common as your physical, like your bludgeoning.
But if you
piercing side.
decide to play a Dragonborn cleric, that ability becomes redundant.
True.
Yeah.
There's many other options you could take to get the resistance to fire. And so.
So, like I said, 17, you get Avatar of Battle. You're going to take half damage from non-magical attacks from the 3 main, like slashing, piercing, bludgeoning. It's unfortunate that it's non-magical only.
But you also get that at level 2. Level 1 as a barbarian.
You do.
With
You do.
rage.
Against magical
And
damage.
And against magic
attacks, too.
attacks.
But it's not the worst. Like, you still fight a surprising number of things at high level that don't count as having magical attacks.
But
So-
like another thing I like about the War Cleric too is like you have that versatility all in one class. Like you have
Yeah.
the healing, you have the ability to tank. Like you're not just a
You
like
can still throw out some melee damage.
exactly like you're not sanctioned off into one role. You can essentially play any role the party needs at any point. Besides like the rogue role.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I
You do have
found
guidance,
that-
though.
That's
So
true.
You can help
That's
somebody
true.
else rogue it up.
I've actually found that, yeah, there's a difference between the War Cleric you played versus the Grave Cleric I've played, and where I didn't really have the option to be the front liner. I mean, clerics in general do have a decent amount of survivability, and
Yeah.
my
Because you have
cleric
clerics
had
have D8 for hit die.
Yeah.
D8, but a lot of the time clerics will have the option of taking Constitution as a stat, which is very useful as well. But yeah, I found that my Grave Cleric didn't perform well as a frontliner, whereas you had more of that option, right?
Mhm.
Like that's what I liked most about the War Cleric was the ability to kind of fall back when you needed to engage in the front line when you needed to, and not really any other class in the game has that versatility. Besides maybe the Paladin.
Yeah.
Paladin less so. Paladin is almost forced to go to the front
Yeah,
line.
because you don't, as a Paladin, you don't have as good of like, spell selection as a War Cleric, because your spells are more devoted to your smites as a Paladin.
You know, this is something I've been thinking about a lot when I started doing a bunch of these videos, because if you look at a lot of the classes that people complain about online, with the exception of the Champion, which I did, but a lot of them like College of Valor Bard, pure caster with some melee, War Cleric, caster with melee, Blade Lock is caster with melee, and it's like nobody complains about Paladins, very few people complain about Eldritch Knights.
Yeah.
It's like if you're making a fighter and then you add in a bit of magic, we still fight really well, so people are generally happy with that mix, you know,
Yeah.
like, yeah, well, I'm still a fighter and now I just got some spells. But when you make like a War Cleric or, you know, a Valor Bard or whatever, and people have this idea that they're going to be like mostly a fighter guy now, it's like, no, you're actually a pure caster that can also kind of fight.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the dissatisfaction comes in.
You've dabbled in that too. Like,
Yeah.
You've tried those classes where you think it's going to be one thing and then it turns out that On paper, it's different than it is in action.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened with my Eldritch Knight Sorcerer combo.
Yeah, actually, I have experience with that too. I've played the wizard one, the Blade Singer.
Blade Singer, yeah.
I've also played the Blade.
I played Blade Singer
Blade
as
Bard.
well, so we've had a couple of them. Yeah, in your college of
yeah,
slates.
and I mean, my mentality when I'm playing the Blade Singer is I'm a wizard that can occasionally go into melee combat. With the Blade Bard, it's a little bit more melee combat with that one because I've focused mainly on including a lot of spells that offer me survivability.
Your War Bard also has the fewest hit points in the party.
Yes,
There is that.
He also tends to take the least damage despite being in
Yeah,
a
because every
position
time it's a hard fight, you
Because-
cast Improved Invisibility on yourself.
Exactly.
And run away.
or
Hide behind the
polymorph.
And hide
barbarian.
behind the barbarian with the most hit points.
Or I use polymorph, or I'll use Tensor's
Yeah.
transformation, which I took as a magical secret. So there are definitely options that you can give yourself through spells to improve your frontline survivability.
And see, me, I've never played a cross class. Like I've never dabbled in cross classing because I'm not as versed in Dungeons and Dragons as a lot of other people, where I can think of these crazy classes like the Palador Sword, for example.
Which I'm thoroughly enjoying so far. Love that guy.
The Sorcerer was another choice for a name, but we didn't like as much.
By the way, if you can think of a more ridiculous name for a paladin sorcerer cross class,
I don't think you're going to find anything more ridiculous than a Palador Sword.
that's a challenge, by the way.
Alright, so domain spells, let's go through those real quick. You get magic weapon.
Meh. A lot of campaigns, players are very quickly
Yeah.
given magic weapons. If you're playing low magic campaigns, I mean, great.
You do get it as a level 1 spell, so I mean...
It's an early
Yeah.
it's an early advantage that the War Cleric has over the other martial classes.
Yeah, and then quickly becomes
And
irrelevant.
then quickly becomes irrelevant when everyone else gets
Hey,
picked.
you can cast that using a 7th level spot to give yourself a +3 weapon.
But that seems like a waste of a level 7 slot.
You get it for an hour. Oh yeah, it's still a waste.
Still
At
a
that
little
point,
bit overkill.
You get much better options at that point. Holy Weapon at level 5 is just amazing. You know, give it to a fighter in the party.
Yeah.
They're gonna love it.
Let's see, you also get Shield of Faith at level 1. I mean, it's on the Cleric spell list anyway, but at least now you don't have to prepare it.
Bonus action +2 AC to anybody nearby. Concentration lasts a minute. Amazing, especially if you're taking it to the front line instead of taking the extra attack
If
first
you're a
round.
delegated tank, then
If you're starting with Chainmail, which I think is 16 AC, you start with a shield, and then you use that on top, you're already at 20 AC, which is ridiculous for level 1.
Really good
Yeah.
at level 1.
And,
Which brings us back to the theme of the War Cleric being fantastic at early levels and then quickly falling off after level 5.
I still think they still remain viable. It's just people need to have the mindset. Like, I think with any of these things, I kind of mentioned in one of the other videos, can't remember which one, but if you need to be casting spells, then you need to be casting spells, right? So I always compare my melee damage on these type of classes versus cantrip damage, because if I had something I needed to cast, then I shouldn't be smacking it with my stick anyways, right? I should be casting that.
Yeah.
So, anyways, level 2 spells, they get Stone Skin.
Actually, while we're on the topic of starting off strong but not maybe ending very well, I think that's more a matter of perception and probably a difficulty with the class as a general in it changes its playstyle rapidly, because you start off, very good frontliner, and then you taper off from being a frontliner and go more into a support and a caster role.
Yeah, and that's just how the class, the subclass is structured in the way that it doles out the.
I mean, even the abilities are a pretty good
exactly.
clue of that, right? At level 2, you can give yourself a +10, but at level 6, you give it to someone else.
Yeah, so it essentially makes it so that you have to vary your playstyle based on how the class is presented, essentially.
By contrast, the light cleric, once again, is always in that support caster role.
You're always in that role from level 1, and it just gets more and more
Specialized
towards that role.
Same with Grave.
Yeah.
Very similar.
A lot of the other cleric domains are like that.
A lot of the cleric domains
life
give you
domain
heavy armor.
is purely dedicated to just healing, and you just get better and better at healing. Like if you have a campaign where a lot of people are taking a lot of damage, a life campaign is very useful. But we've discussed before again that 5th edition, healing isn't entirely necessary, and you did mention in one
A
video
lot less necessary than it used to be, that's
that
for sure.
crowd control is your best form of healing in 5th edition.
Yeah, I really think so too.
My form or my thoughts on healing is your best spell is a level 1 bonus action cast because it's a bonus action cast. And
Your best form of
need
healing
one.
is not having to heal because the enemies
Yeah.
can't act because they're trapped in a force cage for an hour.
Yeah.
Or
Or the
prismatic
wizard
wall.
casting polymorph on the fighter before they go down, turning them into a savager.
Yeah. Taking with
Temporary
or effective hit points. Yeah.
Which my barbarian did at a lot of the early levels when he didn't have the hit
Yeah,
points
that's been another thing in the White Spire campaign is he's had inspirational leaders, so that's
done with so many
out of
warriors.
every short rest.
I
everybody's had
have new
20
love for that
hit
feat,
points.
and
Oh,
the next character that I'm taking, the next character that I make is going to have inspirational leader because it has turned out to be a fantastic feat that just gets better and better as you level up. 'Cause temporary hit points will never be a bad thing.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
it's
Like
one
it
of the
doesn't
things-
it doesn't matter how many temporary hit points you have, it's still a damage shield.
Yeah.
I think that's just another thing, and the perception in our group was that temporary hit points, that sucks, and you have to rest to get them, and they're also going to be a small number of them,
Yeah.
and people just haven't had the foresight to see how that's going to interact with the game. A lot of the time, we take
Because we're all too busy
one.
taking alert.
When
Yeah.
when you have 21 temporary hit points as a barbarian, that temporary
Yeah.
hit points turns into 42,
Yeah.
which is
By the
pretty
way,
huge.
Not recommending inspirational leader for War Cleric. Leave it to the charisma class.
Yeah.
Leave it
Yeah.
to the charisma. Don't take it as a barbarian.
Alright, so-
with 9 charisma.
Other cleric spells or domain spells, they get stone skin.
Meh.
Yeah. Divine favor from the paladin spell list.
I think Divine Favor isn't that bad. Isn't that an extra D4 damage?
Yeah.
Extra D4 damage is a bonus action to cast. It does require concentration, but
Are you really
What else are
struggling
you
for that
using
extra
your-
D4?
I mean,
What else are
yeah,
you using your concentration for as a war cleric?
maybe bless.
Maybe bless. Which,
Shield of Faith,
yeah.
Yeah, you got some other options, but
Spiritual
still.
Weapon,
So,
Spirit Guardians.
yeah,
Well,
so
Spiritual
that-
Weapon doesn't need it.
yeah, they get spiritual weapon though as a domain spell,
Which is
so
a fantastic ability.
Yeah.
That's
but-
actually saving an attunement slot. because
Fantastic use
exactly.
of a bonus
It's
action.
one of those spells that just every cleric should have prepared all the time.
And you should always be casting it because it's.
I wouldn't say always. It's one of those things when I was playing my Grave Domain Cleric, I generally challenged myself once I got second level spells
I remember
always use my bonus action and action.
even at level 18, like my war cleric was still casting it.
Yeah.
Every
Yeah,
time he
you
had a chance because
And
just
it
upcast a couple
scales,
spell
yeah.
slots.
Exactly.
Yeah.
decently scales because
you're
every
basically
two.
you're essentially getting another attack
Yeah.
in return, which
Let's
compensates
see.
for the fall off of the level 1 ability. that you
Yes.
Yeah.
They also get Crusader's Mantle, also from the
have,
Paladin spell
which
list.
is a good spell too.
Yes.
Better than Divine Favor, I'll admit.
Well, it's basically the
You get it earlier than
the
Paladins
AE
too.
Exactly.
You get
Yeah, you
half
do.
the number of levels.
Yeah.
Which if you're going to take war cleric for that ability only,
It really shines in parties that have a lot of other melee fighters.
Yeah.
Which is really ironic. I feel like war clerics are at their best when you've got like 3 other fighters to the party.
yeah,
which I think reinforces their role as
as
support.
a support fighter.
As a support fighter, yeah.
Like I had a lot of like hard times with the war cleric when I was playing because he was like the only frontline fighter. Like,
Yeah.
I was playing the rogue. Oh yeah, I wasn't never the front line though.
You were never in the front line.
I tried to
You
avoid
were-
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you were always like a ranged
Yeah.
attacker. And
Or I was making use of mobile,
Yeah.
which means I wouldn't have to even disengage from my
And
contacts.
so there were very few options that my war cleric could use to support the party, and so he wasn't at like peak performance because like he wasn't using
Yeah.
his abilities to the full potential. So
Yeah, because he was too busy tanking at the time.
too busy tanking.
To no
at the
fault
time.
of his own. Just due to terrible party composition.
Oh, it was horrible.
Now, was it the party that was horrible, or was it with one person's choice? It was the party.
It was a lot of the party.
And then their final domain spell, they get Hold Monster. Interesting, they don't get Hold Person, but they
The
get
monster is a
Hold
better version anyway.
Yeah.
Hold Monster is actually really interesting because clerics do not get Hold Monster; they get Hold Person. But not
Yeah.
Hold Monster. So it opens up that option
So
for crowd
you
control,
have that option.
which
that is
reinforces
one
their
thing I-
position as a support.
That is one thing I do like about their spell list is that you at least manage to incorporate a couple decent spells from other lists.
A couple
Like-
of so-so spells.
Like, I like life clerics, but when you look at their domain spells, they're
it's
just
all,
all
it's
heals.
all cleric
And
spells.
it's like, okay, well, it's
all
nice
heals.
that you don't have to now have all those spells prepared, but
It's
not-
already in your
yeah.
your spell list.
you're not bringing anything new to the table. Whereas, like, if you look at life cleric that he mentioned earlier, you can get stuff like fireball.
Light, not life.
Oh, that's what I meant. Did I say life?
You
again?
said life.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I meant light. Yeah, you can get stuff like fireball. You know,
Well,
so
And see, that's
All
that's
clerics get a fireball. They just get it at level 5 with Divine Smite, which is just terrible. Don't use.
oh, you
Don't
can flame
use
strike. You mean?
flame-
Flame Strike, there we go. Yeah, don't use your 5th level spell slots
Yeah,
for
it's
Flame
just-
Strikes unless
pretty
you're
terrible.
very much hurting for
it's,
that
it's
damage.
not a great 5th level spell. I
It's
discovered
not.
I've discovered that playing the War Cleric. I could be doing more damage in a melee than I could wasting this 5th level spell slot.
I think
On
it
Flame
does have the advantage of only targeting enemies, which means
True.
you can have a bunch of people in the
Yeah.
same area and still do that damage without hurting your party.
Yeah.
It's radiant damage, which is
Half
of
is
it.
radiant.
half of its
Half
radiant.
is fire. Which
Which
just
is
makes
unfortunate
Which
because
just makes it worse, more likely, because
A
Most
lot
of
of,
the
a lot
things
of
that are
things are
vulnerable to
resistant to
radiant.
fire, and there's like
yeah,
5 things that are vulnerable to radiant.
if it was all radiant, you'd be like, oh, okay, that's pretty good.
But most of the
Half
time, half of
radiant
your
and half
damage is
fire.
going to be just negated.
Yeah.
yeah. At that point, you're just better off casting Crusader's Mantle at level
And
3.
yeah.
or-
So, what kind of feats do you think you guys would take to try to make the most out of it?
I discussed this when we first started this conversation. Great Oak Mastery, getting the Great Axe, so that you can be taking that -5 to hit. And if your roll is low, because you can add your feat for the +10 after you've seen the roll, but before the hit is determined,
Yeah.
before that's determined. You combine that with Great Weapon Mastery, you're taking the +10 damage, and you're essentially making it so you can't miss that attack, which is, I think, fantastic.
And you can give yourself bonus action attacks. I mean, with higher wisdom, we'll just say 5 times a day.
And again, apply that to Great Weapon
Yeah.
Mastery, and you're doing the damage of a barbarian at that point.
Savage Attacker probably wouldn't be a bad choice as well, because a lot of your damage, or some of your damage, is going to be based on your weapon. It's not an always take, it's an optional take. Maybe your party's lacking a little bit of damage. I'd also definitely consider the
Warcaster?
Yeah.
yes, Warcaster.
I was gonna
Warcaster
say
is going to
Warcaster.
be one of your main ones.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Because you don't
yeah.
want to.
Advantage on concentration
Yeah.
saves. You can cast. Well, you can already cast with holding a weapon, but you don't have to have a shield or something anymore. That's
Yeah, you
typically
can cast while using a shield
Yeah.
and a weapon.
Another one I would take maybe is heavy armor specialization or heavy armor mastery, whatever they call it.
Yeah.
The thing that deducts
Heavy
3
armor mastery.
damage. I don't know if
And it
it's
gives you a point of
magical,
strength.
non-magical, but yeah,
So
definitely.
if you have an odd strength, it's a good choice.
What about Magic Initiate to work Booming Blade in, since you only have 1 attack around anyways?
I'm gonna say no to no magic initiate. There's just
There's too many better choices.
yeah.
I don't know.
And-
Booming
and-
Blade starts to add up a lot of damage at higher levels. My only
Is
problem
it is it worth losing an ASI or a better feat like
You know-
Clerics for?
I think we're thinking about this the wrong way. Clearly, you're choosing the wrong cantrip. The correct cantrip to choose is Prestidigitation.
I hate you so much.
Well, you could have taken that too if you took Magic Initiate. You get 2, and you get a first
Okay.
level spell. You can take
Prestidigitation.
Find
I
Familiar.
hate
You
this
can take
conversation
Thaumaturgy as one of your starting cantrips,
This conversation.
and then also
Yeah.
Druidcraft
Yeah, there you go. Druid
or
Craft.
Minor Illusion. You do get a level 1 spell that you can cast once per day using that
Yeah.
that feature, which you do have some options. You can find
you can use
familiar-
Hex.
Hex is a good choice. Actually, a very good choice. Actually, I'm going to
Well,
say
you, don't
no.
have, you don't have that much to do with your bonus
It's
action.
based on number of attacks, so I'm going to say no.
Yeah, that's true. You're better off just taking Booming Blade.
Actually, a really good. Actually, you know what? No, I'm thinking it is.
Well,
a
actually,
good
you could
choice.
take both though,
You could
because
take,
you could take Hex.
You
It's
could
your
take
first level
Shillelagh.
spell. You can take Shillelagh. That's true.
and make your 2 hits, and I think damage as well based on
Yeah,
your
based on
wisdom.
your wisdom.
So you can just drop strength completely. It's a bonus action, so you're not going to get it out 2 attacks all the time, but it's an option, especially if you're using Great Weapon Mastery. You just drop your strength score.
You know, the problem with trying to work something like this in on Cleric as opposed to when I talked about the Rogue Champion multi-class, Rogue, you can just go Arcane Trickster and take Booming Blade as one of your cantrips.
Or start
You
with
could start as a High Elf because then you've got great stats for a rogue anyways, and just take that as your bonus cantrip. Or you can take Magic Initiate, or you can multi-class. Whereas Cleric, like, really you're looking at either multi-classing, which seems like a waste if all you want is Boom and Blade, or you're looking at taking a feat.
Another issue I find with the War Cleric too is because you're like delegated to frontline fighter support, you're dividing your ability score a lot too. Like,
Yes, I was going to mention that.
You need strength, you need constitution, you need wisdom. So that's 3 ability scores
Yeah.
that you have to devote yourself to. So you don't really have a lot of room for feats if you want to
Yeah.
min-max your character essentially.
And you need a minimum of 15 if you actually want to use plate armor without
Exactly.
having your movement and ridiculous things.
So you already have like
Yeah.
an ability spread that is pretty demanding as it is, so you don't have a lot of room for feats. So
Yeah.
it makes picking feats that much more important as opposed to picking
I
ability
agree.
scores. So like if you could have one feat as a War Cleric, what would it be?
I almost feel like it has to be Warcaster.
I would default to Warcaster, but it depends on how the party's doing. Because depending on the party
If-
you have, you might decide you need something different.
If your party is more ranged magic user heavy, I would revert to Great Weapon Mastery, just because that would put you in the role of the frontline fighter. Or if the party already has a very frontline heavy composition, then I would go Warcaster because then you have the
survivability for concentration.
Exactly.
I think
I really have mixed feelings with Great Weapon Mastery on the Cleric, because you've only got the 1 attack around.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, the plus 10
like
it's just
you're making
it's pretty much made to go together.
you're making the most out of that 1 attack. With Great Weapon
maybe
Mastery.
2.
Yeah, maybe two. Every once in a while, you're making the most out of your 2 attacks, but for the most part, you're making the most out of the 1 attack you get per round.
You would hit pretty hard though, because like at higher levels, you're going to get 2d8 from your Divine Strike.
Yeah.
You're going to have the weapon damage plus your strength.
So
plus,
if you're using like a great maul or something, that's an extra 2d6, or a great axe, a d12. Because you could do either or, because you're not getting brutal criticals as a cleric, so it's not like the reason to take a great axe on a barbarian is arguably for the brutal criticals, because then you're rolling a d12 as opposed to a d6.
Actually, my way in on Great Weapon Mastery is usually a no, because a lot of the time, if you've got ranged counterparts in your party, a lot of them are going a fighter with 4 attacks, or they're going a ranger with a bow. Those all have, let's say they take sharpshooter. You're already being outclassed in damage. Your role in the party isn't to deal damage. At that point, I'm saying you're probably there to tie people up. I'm going to say go take your heavy armor mastery, or go take that one shield mastery or whatever it is, where you can impose disadvantage and stuff, or take sentinel. Make sure things that are trying to disengage from you can't actually leave 5 feet or your range.
At the end of the day,
Sentinel combined with Spirit Guardians could be pretty decent combo, actually.
You can't use Spirit Guardians casting a spell or it's a bonus action. You'd have to make that weapon attack. Unless you're casting
No, it'd be like you cast Spirit Guardians and that stuff tries to get out of the Spirit Guardians and you use Sentinel. Because it's a reaction.
Doesn't work like that.
Yeah, and if you hit them with your opportunity attack, they can't.
It would have to be your attack, not the Spirit Guardians. Because the Spirit Guardians only activates on a bonus action. Or if you're using Warcaster, you could use it
Not spiritual weapon, I mean Spirit Guardians.
Oh.
So you cast Spirit Guardians, something tries to get out of Spirit Guardians to avoid the damage. Now you get your opportunity attack, but you have Sentinel, so now they're just locked in there taking the damage.
Sorry, I was thinking of the wrong spell there.
Which is a really good combination.
So yeah, I think there's definitely some things you can do to make the most of it. I do think that
it depends on the party you have.
Exactly, it depends on your party's composition. If you really want to play a Warcaster, the way you build your character depends entirely upon the rest of the party's composition. Like you're gonna base the feats you take, the ability scores you take, entirely upon what you have in the party and what everyone else is taking. Because if you're the only frontline fighter, you're gonna be doing the damage. But if you have a ranger in the party with sharpshooter, you have an arcane archer in the party with sharpshooter. It's 4 attacks with sharpshooter. You've already got the damage that you need right there. So.
At that point, it's focusing on making sure they don't have disadvantage because someone's within 5 feet, or being the front
Yeah.
line.
So then you
that
delegate
somebody's soaking
yourself
up the
to a
damage.
support role and take feats according to a support role. So then you take feats like Warcaster, so you can cast those
Which
spells.
I think is why a lot of people tend to be disappointed or think that the Warcast or the War Cleric is a
Because
poor
it's
domain.
not what people
It's
are
not
expecting.
the damage dealer
Yeah.
that people expect.
Yeah. Like on paper, it looks like, oh, okay, I can be like a tank damage dealer, and
Yeah.
at the same time heal. But
They think they're going to be like a paladin
Yeah.
with heavier casting and a little less melee, and it turns out they have way heavier casting and way less melee.
4 levels in, you discover that hey, this isn't exactly what I expected,
Yeah.
and you're kind of resorting to the support role. So that's one thing to know before you decide. To
Or
make a
you're
contract.
refusing to go to the support role and hating your character because it's
Yeah.
not as good as you thought it would be.
I had
But-
a good time with the War
Yeah.
Cleric, though. Like I didn't.
But you know, like, as long as you're maintaining the idea that my melee attacks are just there instead of using cantrips, which I feel like it's kind of an obvious trait, right? You either get the bonus damage of your cantrip or you get the bonuses to your melee damage.
Yeah.
And that just kind of tells you, if I don't have a spell to cast, I'm just going to use
'Cause
a cantrip
a
if
lot
I have
of-
bonus to cantrip damage.
A lot of the
Or
other.
I'll use a weapon if I have bonus to weapon damage. You know?
Yeah, sorry.
Yes.
A lot of the other cleric specializations have their wisdom modifier onto their cantrip damage.
Yeah,
So as a war cleric, you're essentially trading off that damage.
yeah.
So like,
Same with life domain; they get bonus damage, so
Yeah.
they're also like a support
Trickery.
up there. But they, trickery is just weird.
yeah, that's a story for another time.
I think actually, does trickery get heavy armor? I'm not sure.
No,
I don't think
they
so,
do
no.
not.
No.
But they do get divine strike instead of the
Yeah,
bonus of
that's
cantrip damage.
they're a weird one.
And it's poison damage is their damage, which is
Oh,
like one of
that's-
the worst in the game.
That's definitely an interesting.
Yeah.
I do think though, like, not to get too badly off topic, I think we can pretty much sum things up at this point, but one thing I do think people overlook with trickery domain clerics is they have an amazing spell list.
Oh yeah,
their
they're
actual
probably
core
one of the
abilities.
best domain
Yeah.
spell lists in the game.
They're-
Which is one thing that people overlook when they're looking at domains in general.
Yeah.
yeah,
Generally, a poor subdomain or domain feature is
Will
made
have-
up with
Yeah.
an
Well,
amazing spell list.
spell list.
yeah. At one point, I'll do a video on trickery domain clerics too, because that's another one that
Except
gets
for
a lot of hatred.
none of us have played one, and I kind of want to play one now.
You were talking about running like a rogue campaign or like a thief campaign with like a thieves guild.
It wouldn't necessarily have to be a thieves guild. You could have players on different sides of the thing in the city.
I just like the idea of a person who isn't good enough to become a thief, but he's holy, and so
Yeah,
he's like,
and then you worship like the god of thieves.
yeah. So you worship the god of thieves, or Timora, the goddess of luck,
Yeah, something like
and so,
that.
and so you kind of your character kind of wants to
Like a halfling
yeah
trickery domain
wants to
cleric.
be part of this thieves guild, but they're not like really good at being a
Yeah.
thief.
Their,
but
their
they
dexterity just wasn't high enough.
yeah, but they worship this god that gives them all these like thievery abilities, and so it kind of creates an interesting character idea.
Yeah.
I think it's very interesting because I see it more as like a Loki, a trickster.
Yeah.
Taking from the name trickery. They're not necessarily just a thief. They're there to confuse and befuddle the enemy rather than straight up steal from them. It's like a court jester.
It's definitely it'd be a really interesting play style that I haven't ever seen anyone play because no one,
Yeah,
I think it's too
nobody
challenging.
thinks about it.
Too many people at our table are busy playing their fourth different fighter subclass.
Which is their area to excel in. Let's not make no mistakes.
Yeah, I'm
true.
no better. I've played an Eldritch Knighted Champion and I've played Paladin now. I only hit 3 levels of Battle Master on areas, but still.
I like to think that I've varied my roles across our many campaigns.
Yeah.
I played a pure support bard at one point,
Yeah.
who is locked in a dimension naked.
Yeah, that was
the
his-
best way to kill
yeah.
characters in any game is just give them a deck of many things.
Give a deck of many things to a bard who is very
And
player.
watch us-
Inquisitive.
Just watch us kill ourselves, yeah.
Yeah.
Alright, so let's end things here. I think we've pretty much discussed War Cleric to death at this point. Not much more to be said on the subject. But yeah, pretty decent discussion, I think.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't be displeased playing the War Cleric, but that's probably because my playstyle as a player is towards support roles. I don't necessarily care to be the one dealing.
Troy. What's your opinion on the cleric?
They suck.